My name is Donaldo Pareto. I'm going to be a upcoming junior, and I go to Live Oak High School.
Hi, my name's Thomas Edward Dixon. I go to Hercules High, and I'm about to be a senior.
The topic we chose to talk about is climate refugees, because for one reason, many people usually try to focus on the people that are going to be affected, not on the people that have been affected. And so we want to show people the struggles of the things that people that have already been affected are going through right now.
Yeah.
The term climate refugee refers to people who are forced to leave their homes due to an unfavorable change to their local environment that would compromise their well-being. Such changes are held to include drought, desertification, and disruption of seasonal weather patterns, such as monsoons. Climate refugees may flee or migrate to another country, or they may migrate internally within their own country if such a privilege is afforded to them. However, the term climate refugee is used somewhat interchangeably with a range of similar terms, such as environmental immigrant, environmental migrant, climate migrant, and much, much more. However, some people would argue that there is a distinction between these terms. Despite problems in formulating a uniform and clear-cut definition of the word, the concept has remained deeply ingrained in the minds of early 2000s policymakers. You see, according to the International Displacement Monitoring Center, more than 42 million people were displaced in Asia and the Pacific during 2010 and 2011. That's about more than twice the population of Sri Lanka. This figure includes those that have been displaced by storms, floods, heat waves, and cold waves. Still others were displaced by drought and sea level rise. Most of those compelled to leave their homes eventually returned when conditions improved, but an undetermined number became migrants, usually within their own country, but also across national borders in some cases. Additionally, it is maintained that areas stricken with poverty tend to be at a greater risk to be damaged by climate change and sea level rise. As a result, climate change threatens areas already suffering from extreme poverty.
Around Nikita, the Bimea Lady, he may I give us or about Ranaginapak in the climate change. Again, go on, the big Bubra by the Ruadi, Mena was or one name. The Dabainan, the Tania, the Harayon, Jeroka Abenipak, our Wausekin. Ang kanaya bus, o tina iroko yakin, awas. Kaya nanon na nawa tiririk, at yaw sa ari meyaka, iyay, inang urwak, minti na o takana kinakawak. Toy mina sinang kakaya, arata pa ni meya.
Island nations produce a significant amount of climate refugees due to the fact that many of them are dependent on survival of delicate climate systems. Furthermore, they are all relatively close to the sea level and are thus in more danger of being severely damaged by the rising sea level. Climate change may affect all of us, but it doesn't affect us all equally. The island nation of Kiribati is the first country in the world to announce that it is officially recognized that it is in grave danger of losing all of its land to climate change, specifically rising sea level. In June of 2008, Kiribati asked the nations of Australia and New Zealand to accept their citizens as permanent refugees, and the president, Emeka Tong, stated that we may already be at the point of no return, where the emissions in the atmosphere will carry on contributing to climate change. So in time, our small low-lying islands will be submerged. Tong said, according to the worst-case scenarios, Kiribati will be submerged within this century. In early 2012, Kiribati bought a 2,200-hectare Nautotaric estate on the second biggest island of Fiji. The original plan for the purchased land was to use it to evacuate some if not most, of Kiribati citizens. However, the land was re-entered and inhabitable in April of 2013. President Tom stated urging citizens to evacuate the island and seek refuge elsewhere.
Another island nation by the name of Maldives is also another country in grave danger of losing all of its land to climate change. The president of Maldives has claimed that his country is ranked the third most endangered in the world to suffer flooding from climate change and to possibly lose all of its land as well. However, as we have stated earlier, climate change may affect us all, but it does not affect us all equally. Maldives is not in nearly as much danger as Kiribati, because it is considerably more wealthy due to its booming tourist industry. Because Maldives has money, it can afford to pay other countries to give its citizens permanent refuge. This creates a very interesting dynamic because it shows that economic standing is also affected by climate change, and that poorer areas will suffer more because they are unable to properly help themselves. Nonetheless, we must not forget that even though one of these countries is more equipped to handle the changing climate than the other, that does not mean that this is a minor issue.
Part of the problem will certainly have to be navigated. You see, Maldives and Kiribati aren't the only nations that are going to be affected by the rising sea level. There are approximately 32 islands that are predicted to be completely submerged by water by the year 2100. And after losing their homes, all of these people will have to migrate to other countries, possibly even to the United States. Sea level rise is a problem that is going to affect the lives of millions of people, and up until very recently, it has been treated like an afterthought. Due to the slow reaction of the general public to these events, millions of people could potentially die. It is considerably easier for us, those who are in significantly less danger, to ignore and dismiss problems like these. But the fact of the matter is that we are facing a dilemma that is much greater than any single entity, and thus it should be treated as such and not swept under the rug.
The relocation of those affected by the changing climate poses another problem. Moving millions of people to different parts of the world is obviously going to be very expensive. Furthermore, helping these people adjust to their new surroundings will pose a significant challenge. Some countries already have trouble providing jobs and financial aid to their own citizens, so if thousands of new, jobless people are added to the economic system, then most of them will remain jobless for some time. The natural result of this will be that a disproportionate amount of climate refugees will be living in abject poverty in the new areas that they migrate to. And with the limited opportunities to move up the social ladder, it is extremely likely that their children will also live in the same kind of poverty, turning this into a compound issue of climate change and immigration. It can also be assumed that some of these people would also be forced to turn to crime in order to make a sustainable income. And the last thing that any area needs is more crime. That would mean that in addition to the rise in the homeless population and the increase in the amount of people on welfare, there would also be a significant spike in crime. Climate change will not only take away their homes, but it will also take away all the hard work that these people have put into building up their lives.
The sudden influx of jobless people could also lead to many forms of exploitation. These people would obviously be desperate for work and would therefore be more than willing to work in unsafe or unsanitary conditions to make ends meet. Mind you, we are aware that there are laws in place to protect workers and keep them from being exploited. However, we should take note that these laws are often ignored in cases involving migrant workers. According to the Southern Poverty Lawsuit Center, the lawsuit was filed in April 2006 against Del Monte Fresh Produce because even though they had acquired illegal permission to bring people over from Mexico to work for them, they had refused to pay the minimum wage, and reconciliation was not received until 4 years later in 2007. Therefore, it is by no means illogical to assume that something similar could happen to climate refugees who migrate to different countries but face the same kind of discrimination. The problems that come with the displacement of these climate refugees are by no means localized. In these increasingly connected times, the echoes of the hardship will be heard by all. Social welfare will be strained, job markets will become oversaturated, and minority groups will be exploited. These are all inevitable outcomes to the displacement of islanders due to the rise in sea level. And if nothing is done to address climate change, then most, if not all, of these scenarios become real problems that we will have to deal with in everyday life. The key to solving a problem is to first accept there is a problem, and secondly, acknowledge the severity of this said problem, so that the appropriate amount of attention can be and will be given to it.
Okay, so I'll just wait for this situation over here to resolve. Well, okay, you've all seen the problems that have been created by climate change, and I feel as though after watching this video, perhaps you're all now a bit more informed about the severity of the issues facing our world today. But how about, for a second, we look on the brighter side and see some possible solutions to these problems?
The first solution would be, as we stated in the video, that some of these people move to the United States because this is the land of opportunity. This would also mean that taxes would have to go up for citizens because more government assistance would be needed for the refugees that come. It seems like a bad idea to bring in new citizens, but it's better to help them out now before it's too late, before they no longer have a place to stay.
Now, this means that the taxes will go up for the U.S. citizens because the government would have to supply considerably more financial aid to a larger population of people because there's a lot more, immigrants now who need more support because they don't have any money. Now, the island nations can put sand up to raise the level of their beaches in order to halt the rising sea. Because if the sea is going to rise 1 foot, then the problem would be as simple as to apply 2 feet of sand to the beach. You see, that way the beach is higher than the sea. The only problem this would really create is that sand has a tendency to be dragged away by the incoming tide. So you would have to replace the sand after a couple months. But I mean, it still solves the problem temporarily, and having some sand is better than no sand, so.
The third and most obvious solution is for the people of the island nations to evacuate. As we stated in the video, Kiribati and Maldives have already started to evacuate. And what they can do is buy or ask people to take in their citizens in order for them to have a home. The only problem is they don't know where to go. As you see, as we stated in the video, Kiribati tried buying some estate down in an island in Fiji, but it turns out it was uninhabitable and it wasn't able to be used for evacuation. And Fa'afetai Telalawa, God bless, and thank you for paying attention to our video.